Okay, let's bring in National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. Kevin, good to have you with
Great
us.
To be here, Martha.
You hear that argument from the vice president. We know that Congress believes they're able to come up with about $2.5 trillion in cuts, but the spending in the bill is around $4 trillion right now. He's saying growth is the way out of that situation. Where do you believe this stands?
Right. Well, the vice president's 100% right that growth is part of the equation. But don't forget that in the reconciliation bill, that, by the way, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, I just saw him walking in over towards the Oval as they were coming over here for the hit, that the reconciliation bill cuts some of the spending, but a lot of the discretionary spending that we're going after with DOGE is something that doesn't count in the budget rules that they have up there. So there's going to be big spending cuts within the reconciliation bill, and then there's going to be big DOGE cuts coming as well. And so the bottom line is that we've got a very, very pro-growth tax bill that's going to give us 3, maybe even 4% economic growth that, combined with the DOGE cuts and the stuff that's in reconciliation, is going to be very, very pleasing for markets. And you don't have to believe me, Martha. All you have to do is look at the 10-year Treasury rate, which is down about 50 basis points since we started this. And that means that the Treasury market thinks, oh, the U.S. is going to get spending and inflation under control, so we can charge a lower interest rate. There's less risk of inflation loss from holding these debt.
Well, no doubt the market is looking for any signs that that the U.S. economy will grow and that the trade situation will be stabilized to the extent that that is allowed to happen. But, you talk about the DOGE cuts, and Congress has to cut their own money out of this bill. And I know they kept saying, oh, well, DOGE isn't asking us anything and they're not cooperating with us. But as I see it, in terms of the way it was described, DOGE was going after bureaucracy and cutting what they could cut, about $168 billion. But Congress has that responsibility completely separate from the DOGE savings. They can't count in the DOGE savings, right?
No, well, within the rescission, the budget rule package, then they don't get the DOGE savings, but the DOGE savings are going to happen, and they're going to save the taxpayers money, and in the end, they're going to reduce the deficit by a lot. And the fact is that I was just speaking to Russ Moat, the chairman of the Office of Management and Budget, and we've been looking at rescission packages so that once we package together all the DOGE cuts, we can put it in one bill. And it's a little known thing that we can send it up to Congress to rescind, and then they can do it without filibuster. It only takes 51 votes. And so Republicans can cut this spending.
Yeah, just like anybody at home says, well, we were taking that vacation. We're not taking that vacation anymore. You can cross things off your list, and Congress can do that to money that they have already appropriated. I want to pull up this post from President Trump, True Social post, and he says, and this is whether or not he's going to raise taxes on the upper end of the income bracket. He says, the problem with even a tiny tax increase for the rich, which I and all others would graciously accept in order to help the lower and middle income workers, is that the radical left Democrat lunatics would go around screaming, read my lips, the fabled quote by George Bush the elder that is said to have cost him the election. He says, no, Ross Perot cost him the election. In any event, he says, Republicans should probably not do it, meaning raising taxes on the wealthy, but I'm okay if they do. Are we going to see a tax increase at the upper end of the income bracket?
That's going to, in the end, be up to Congress. President Trump has made it clear that he has his priorities, like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent. Those are his priorities. That's what he wants. He knows that Congress is going to pick some of their own priorities and stick them in the bill. And he said that if they do that, he doesn't think it's a good idea. But if they were to do that, then he wasn't going to veto the bill, essentially, is the way I read that True Social. That's consistent with the things that I've heard him said. He's told us over and over, Scott Bessent and I have been negotiating with people on the Hill to emphasize the president's priorities and to redline them, to make sure they make it into the bill. I can promise you that we all believe that the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, the auto loan interest-free or tax-free on interest, all that stuff is going to be in the bill. And that's the president's priority. And if Congress adds some other things, then it might not be the things that are his high priorities. But in the end, he understands that this is going to be one of the biggest, best tax cuts ever. It's going to cause the golden age to start because of all the economic growth we get for it. And he's not going to upend it by not letting Congress play the games that Congress has to pay to get the bill passed.
All right. We saw a contraction in growth last quarter. The Atlanta Fed is expecting a 2.2 growth in this second quarter, although it's early in the quarter, to say where we're going to be, if we'll see some GDP growth expansion. But we'll stay on it, and I know you do. Thank you, Kevin. Always good to see you.
Martha.
Kevin Hassett.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.